Welcome to the Fish House Nation podcast. We're on the floor of the St. Paul Ice Fishing Show. It's the last day. We're wrapping up here. Bluegill, you've got a chance here with Mr. Bluegill, Fred Peterson. Forgot to introduce him. So you've been here all weekend long. Tell me about the show and kind of what you've seen.
You know, the show is always a great time to come and meet all the guys in the industry. You know, it's like a giant family reunion. You know, we all get to see each other just a few times a year, and this is obviously the mecca of it all. You know, we get to come out, hang with all the manufacturers. We see a lot of the same customers over and over for the last 15 years, and it's just a giant reunion. And you know, you've got great deals at every booth. If people want to buy stuff, come here and spend your money. I mean, you're going to save a ton of money. Everything that is ice fishing is here. There's a lot of cool things. You know, I can remember the first year coming to this show, seeing stuff that I never even knew existed. You know, all these little trinkets and gadgets and different contraptions that guys have made that, you know, are in Minnesota that we don't get a chance to see in Wisconsin a whole lot. But it's here. And, you know, we're going to talk, I think, a little bit today about some baits. Yeah. Everybody's got awesome baits, and, you know, everybody now is doing their custom painting and all these fancy colors and that. But I'm going to kind of probably upset a few guys. Hey, how's it going, Rocky?
We're in an active booth, so sometimes things happen. People got to get their drink. People got to get their jacket. They got to head out and have a little lunch or something. But it's just funny. And one of the things that you brought up there that I wanted to touch on real quick is you said there's a lot of stuff that you've never even seen. And I live in this area, so I've actually had a lot of friends come through and I've talked to this weekend, and they're like, hey, I saw this thing and I didn't even know about it. So I think a lot of people think of this as a deal show, and it's certainly a deal show, but it is an opportunity to go and see stuff that you've never seen.
Yeah, it's like the ICAST for ice fishing. It honestly is. I mean, there's, like you say, there's so many different booths and guys making, you know, different products that help ice anglers that you would never see, for, you know, from a major manufacturer. Because it's a guy that's doing it in his basement or in his garage, and even though it's a small deal, you know, there's some great products that are here to help us, and I fall victim to it every year. I always find that one thing is like, man, that is cool. I gotta have it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we obviously work for some of the big names in the industry with Eskimo and Ion and Markham and Elliott and all these great brands, but it is fun to go to some of these places and just buy some of the stuff for these guys who are just building stuff out of the garage.
Yeah. Yep. And they do a great job doing it too. So. You know, we'll back up a little bit. Let's talk about baits.
Let's do it.
You know, talking about custom paint and stuff. We're just let's use a Swedish pimple, something that is like a staple in the ice fishing industry for, you know, 100 years, right? Everybody asks me always, what is your favorite color? Right. Now, obviously fish see some sort of hue, but they don't actually see the true colors like you think they would. And this study's been done time and time and time again, but yet, you know, in a package, as fishermen, we are caught.
Right.
These custom paint guys do phenomenal work. I mean, incredible lifelike images, really fine detailed scale patterns and all these fancy colors. But do fish really see that? Or is it just catching the fishermen?
I always want to know that, because people tell me that dogs are colorblind. I'm like, who has ever asked a dog if he could see a color, and then did he answer? Like, that's what I want to know. How do they know that?
Right. Well, and there again, too, you know, with all the different studies that have happened, you know, I know Pure Fishing has their bait tanks that, you know, the racetrack and stuff, where they put colors and different stuff in front of fish. You know, just with how many hours on the water I've had in the last, you know, 20 years, trying, you know, when you got fish that are active and they're biting one thing, and if they're really biting, you know, that's the time where you should be trying new things, not just sitting there and ripping on them. You know, that's when we'll take and try different colors and different baits and this and that, and you kind of get a good a grasp of what works and what doesn't work. But going back to these custom painted colors, let's say you got a crankbait, and we'll talk ice fishing and summer fishing as well, but let's say, you know, you're out on Lake Erie, Clearwater, and you're trolling walleyes, and you got a $20 custom painted P10 that would only normally cost $6. and you're trolling that thing through the water at 2 miles an hour, and that walleye's down below. And this crankbait has got the most incredible detailed scale patterns on the top of the bait, you know, really nice cut lines, and in a package, like, wow, that's awesome. But you gotta look, a walleye sees that bait at 2 miles an hour, he's got 2 seconds to figure out, is he gonna eat it or is he gonna not? And he's not seeing the top of the bait, he's seeing the bottom of the bait. But what they see is this, you know, the flash, the contrast, and the different hue of colors, whether it be a black and a white, or a, you know, a bright and a dark, and you get that flash in the water. That's what those fish are attracted to, that's what they go to. They could give two rats behinds about all the fancy stuff that's painted on there. So that's, I know the custom painted guys hate me for saying that, but truthfully, that's really what happens. And you know, when I ice fish, most of the stuff I use is going to be pretty much one of 4 colors. It's going to be, usually it's a hammered or a type of a bright or a copper plated, a silver plated, a gold plated, or like a black or a black nickel. With those 4 colors, you've got the spectrum pretty much well covered. And again, they're seeing contrast in the water. So if you've got you know, a really bright sunny day, you know, I always tell people this is what fish see. Look up at a light or look up at something bright, the bottom of the ice, or you know, the top of the water, and if it's really bright outside, they're going to be blinded. So you want something dark. You want something that's going to have that contrast, and something that's going to create like a shadow that they can then, you know, focus in on and get those fish there. If it's really dark outside, you don't want something bright. You want something, I'm sorry, you don't want something dark. You want something bright that's going to give the contrast against a dark surface. So that's kind of the, you know, the way I look at it, how I go about things. Now, that doesn't mean that when we're, you know, fishing bluegills, really finicky fish, that, you know, a pink, an orange, you know, a chartreuse, there are colors that do better in certain water, you know, situations, whether you got stained water or clear water. If I got clear water, it's just like fishing in a, you know, in a clear day. I want to use something dark. I want that shadow. If I got stained water, I want that fish to be able to see something, so I'm going to use something probably a little bit brighter. But that doesn't mean that, you know, a dark color is going to work or isn't going to work in stained water. But to spend all this money and extra on all these fancy custom painted baits, I'm going to tell you right now, don't waste your money. You know, the painters are catching you, but it's not necessarily doing much better for the fishing. The reason it's working is because that's what the people buy. If they would just buy the basic stuff works too. You know, you look at the World Ice Fishing Competition, I know a lot of guys, you know, a couple of my really good buddies, you know, Nick Shirt's one of them. These guys go over to Poland and Czechoslovakia and Europe and ice fish against some of the best ice fishermen in the world, right? When you go over there, there's no colors. You've got gold, copper, silver, and typically a black or a black nickel. And there might be like a pink or a white, just basic colors. But any of this fancy custom painted stuff, they don't even sell it over there. And they kick our ass every year that we go over and try and fish. So, I mean, you gotta look at what everybody else in the world is using. In America, everybody is sold by sex appeal. I mean, really, that's really what it comes down to.
I actually just talked to one of my friends over in another booth, and he had a big bag full of stuff, and he's really into plastics. And he's like, well, what'd you buy? I don't know, why'd you buy that? He's like, well, I bought all this stuff because I don't have those. And he's like, I'm just going to admit to you, he's like, I collect them. He's like, I just want something because I don't have that. And he's like, I'm just a collector. Like, that's what I'm into. And I'll fish with them. But he's like, at the end of the year, I don't use them. It's fine. I'm going to buy more next year because I just like to have it. He's like, I'm a junkie for it. So I think a lot of people that are into that stuff, they're just junkies for it. And they just want to have it. But like you say, you know, if you really want to go catch fish, you don't really need that. And one of the cool things that I liked about what you just said there, though, we'll go back about 5 minutes. You talked about sometimes you try to not catch fish.
Yeah.
I think that's cool. So you're on a bite and you're like, well, what can I do to not catch these fish? I think that's something that if you're, and that happens to all of us, where someday you're out there and it's just like whatever you do doesn't matter, you're kicking butt. But to go through that tackle box and look for something that turns them off, that's a good way to learn.
It's a huge, huge learning deal. And I do it whether it be panfish or walleyes. if I've got a group of guys out and my clients are catching fish, I'm doing 180 degrees opposite of what they're doing to see, one, if I can still catch them, or two, maybe this is what's turning them off, so I can relate, nah, I don't want to be doing this in this situation, just making mental notes of everything. And if you do that time and time again, pretty soon you can put down your own patterns and figure out what works and what doesn't work. And it may be just for that body of water, and something, what didn't work there might work over here. So it's really, being observant, teaching yourself, getting out of the norm, and that's what makes us all better fishermen.
Very good. Anything else you want to talk about before we wrap up here?
We're in the Markham booth, and one of the biggest things that helps us teach also are the cameras. These small pursuit cameras, or these underwater cameras that we've been using the last few years, it is definitely worth your time and money to buy a camera. Whether you can afford the great one, that can do recording, or just get a basic one, get something that you can drop a camera down and watch what's happening under the water. See how these fish react, and it's going to teach you, invaluable amount of information. A lot of times, there'll be times where we'll go out and, everybody uses sonar to search for stuff. But if you're on a basin and you got good clear water, you can take a camera, drop it down, scan it, and you're going to see 15, 20 feet. That's way more than what you can do by just drilling one hole and dropping a locator down and scanning. So we're using the cameras a lot for finding fish, and then when we're on some of these spooky bites, especially in shallow water, we don't use the flashers. We use like a 5-foot rod. Make sure there's fish in the area, and then we just hole hop real stealthy and quietly, because when we're fishing these shallow waters too, talking about shadows and whatnot, if you've ever had the opportunity to go under the ice and look up, the amount of shadows and stuff that even a bucket or a locator or you holding a rod over the top of a hole it's crazy on how much the fish can see. You got to remember, the fish's eyes are up here, so they're seeing everything that's going on up above them. So if you're out walking around jigging, this thing is moving around, you're spooking these fish. So a lot of times in shallow water, we stand in one spot, don't move, drill holes around us, in these weed beds. These fish just kind of cruise. And if I'm fishing a 5-foot rod, I can cover a 25-foot circle with never having to move a step. And the other guys that are fishing around us are, drilling holes, dropping their locators on the ice, walking around, and they're just dispersing those fish. So, having a camera just to check and see what's going on and watch and see how these fish react, definitely one of the best tools you can have as an angler.
Yeah, I was talking to a guy yesterday, and he was telling me about what they do with their cameras, and obviously, kind of what you're saying. They're looking for a certain type of weed, and being able to look down and see the weeds that they're looking for to kind of replicate a pattern. And the other thing he was talking about with walleye fishing is a lot of times when you're looking at your sonar, you're looking at that sonar, and it looks like the fish is kind of just looking at your lure, but he's it's actually moving around, and it's kind of checking things out, but deep enough where it looks like it's just kind of looking right at your lure. And he's being able to look at that with a camera and see the body language. Fish have body language just like we do.
Oh, yeah.
And let you know kind of what they like and what they don't like.
Yep. That's a prime deal, that body language of fish. Perch are really good to watch. If a bite is on, or even bluegills or walleyes, anytime a fish is cruising through and their fins are laid down and their mouths are closed and they're just kind of doing this thing, they're not feeding, they're not active. But you drop a bait down, and all of a sudden, the hair on the back of the fins, whatever, just boom, and they pop up. Okay, you excited them. That's something that you can see on the camera, and it's invaluable just to get those reactions. And you can start jigging or do something, and then they'll get really twitchy. Okay, you're doing something that they like. But if you're jigging and they're just, then they drop their fins back down, and they don't show any interest, all right, figure out what you're doing wrong and change it up a little bit. Another thing, again, going back and talking about shadows, everybody likes to drop their camera down and put it right in the zone and then look at where your bait is. Okay, that's great. I mean, you can do that. We all do it. It's fun to watch a fish bite, but a lot of times, you know, you're missing what could either be up above or what could be below that area. So what I've done for years, goes back to the original 460, 560 rotating cameras that Markham had, I would flip them and drop them down to the bottom and look up, because now you've got this big, bright white background, and anything that swims through, you can pick out super easy. Whereas if you're looking down, you know, you're looking at the top of a dark fish over a dark bottom, you miss a lot of the fish. So, you know, dropping your camera down, if you got good clear water, and looking up is an amazing way to fish. You're gonna see a lot more, and again, seeing is believing.
Very cool. Troy Peterson,
Hey,
Mr.
thanks,
Bluegill,
guys.
Thank you. If people want to get a hold of you, maybe do some fishing with you, how do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, MrBluegill.com. Facebook, you can find me on Facebook. Just type in a Mr. Bluegill search. Otherwise, it's Facebook.com/walleye guide. I know we're booking a lot of trips already for the winter, and we're excited. Ice is going to be here before we know. Oh, you guys got it in Minnesota, but in Wisconsin, probably here the second week of December.
Very good. For Troy Peterson, I'm Chris Larson. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. See you next time.